Vamos a comenzar con la alabanza al Buda Shakyamuni. Maestro, destructor de enemigos, ha sido Buda completa y perfectamente despierto, dotado con sabiduría y conducta ejemplar, ido al gozo, timonero que guía a los seres ordinarios que aún deben ser domados, ser supremo, maestro de todos los dioses y los hombres, Buda, destructor de enemigos, glorioso y victorioso ser Shakyamuni. Ante ti me postro y a ti voy por refugio. Maestro, destructor de enemigos, has sido Buda completa y perfectamente despierto, dotado con sabiduría y conducta ejemplar, ido al gozo, timonero que guía a los seres ordinarios que aún deben ser domados, ser supremo, maestro de todos los dioses y los hombres, Buda, destructor de enemigos, glorioso y victorioso ser Shakyamuni. Ante ti me postro y a ti voy por refugio. El Sutra del Corazón de la Perfección de la Sabiduría. Así lo oí. Una vez el bendito estaba residiendo en Rayagrilla, en la montaña llamada Pico del Buitre, junto a una gran asamblea de monjes, una gran asamblea de bodhisattvas. En ese momento el bendito entró al samadhi que expresa el Dharma llamado iluminación profunda. Y al mismo tiempo el noble Avalokiteshvara, el bodhisattva Mahasattva, mientras practicaba la profunda perfección de la sabiduría, vio lo siguiente. Vio que los 5 skandhas son de la naturaleza del vacío. Entonces, por el poder del Buda, el venerable Shariputra le preguntó al noble Avalokiteshvara, el bodhisattva Mahasattva, cómo debe entrenar un hijo o una hija de familia noble que quiere practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría. Entonces el noble Avalokiteshvara, el bodhisattva Mahasattva, le contestó al venerable Shariputra, oh Shariputra, un hijo o una hija de familia noble que desea practicar la profunda perfección de sabiduría debe practicar así, viendo lo siguiente, que los 5 skandhas son de la naturaleza del vacío. La forma es el vacío también es la forma. El vacío no es otra cosa que el vacío. La forma no es otra cosa que el vacío. De la misma manera, los sentimientos, las percepciones, las formaciones mentales y la conciencia también son el vacío. Por lo tanto, Shariputra, todos los dharmas son el vacío. No existen las características, no existe el nacimiento ni la cesación. No hay impureza y no hay pureza. No hay merma ni hay aumento. Tanto Shariputra, vacío no hay forma, sentimiento, percepción, formación mental ni conciencia. No hay ojos, oídos, nariz, lengua, cuerpo o mente. No hay apariencias, ni sonidos, ni olores, ni sabores, ni tacto, ni dharmas. No hay datu de los ojos y hacia hasta el datu de la mente y conciencia. No hay ignorancia ni fin de la ignorancia hasta la vejez y la muerte. No hay fin de la vejez y de la muerte. No hay sufrimiento ni origen del sufrimiento. No hay cesación del sufrimiento, ni sendero, ni sabiduría, ni logro, ni ausencia de logro. Por lo tanto, Shariputra, ya que los bodhisattvas no tienen logros, moran en la profunda perfección de la sabiduría. Como no hay obscuración en la mente, no hay tampoco temor. Trascienden lo falso y alcanzan el nirvana total. Todos los budas de los 3 tiempos, a través de la práctica de la profunda perfección de la sabiduría, despiertan completamente a la iluminación insuperable, verdadera y total. Por lo tanto, el gran mantra de la profunda perfección de la sabiduría, el mantra de la gran percepción, el mantra insuperable, el mantra inigualado, el mantra que calma todo sufrimiento, debe ser conocido como la verdad ya que no contiene falsedad. El mantra de la profunda perfección de la sabiduría es Tayata Gate Gate Para Samgate Bodhisoha. 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 Tayata Gate Gate paragate, parasamgate bodhisoha, tayata gate gate, paragate, parasamgate bodhisoha, tayata gate gate, paragate, parasamgate bodhisoha. Por lo tanto, Shariputra, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva debe entrenarse en la profunda perfección de la sabiduría. Entonces el bendito salió del Samadhi y elogió al noble Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, diciendo: bien dicho, así es, oh hijo de noble familia, así es. Se debe practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría, así como has explicado, y todos los Tathagatas se regocijarán. Cuando el bendito dijo estas palabras, el venerable Shariputra y el noble Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, y toda la asamblea de dioses, humanos, asuras y gandharvas se regocijaron y alabaron las palabras del bendito. Hacemos la ofrenda del mandala breve en español. Esta tierra ungida con perfume y regada de flores, con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna, como una tierra pura de Buda yo te ofrezco, que todos los seres puedan gozar de una tierra así. Oh sagrado y venerable Lama, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría dharmakāyika, por favor derrama una lluvia del Dharma vasta y profunda, de acuerdo precisamente con las necesidades de los que serán adiestrados. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Nirjatayami. Tomamos 3 veces refugio. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres.
And then, after taking refuge, then we experience the nectars and rays pouring into our bodies from the Guru's heart, or we can think from the Guru's body, speech, and mind pouring into our body, speech, and mind, and that of all sentient beings around us is the white nectars and rays, purifying all of the obstacles to attaining enlightenment. Any obstacles that we brought here from the city, from the town, any obstacles in our mind just tonight, to being able to create an environment, an atmosphere here where we can receive teachings on kind of how to do retreat, about retreat, which is really about how to take the intellectual teachings and bring them into our daily life experience. And so we actually transform our experience of self and others, changing the karma of our perception, whether it's retreat far away in some quiet place or just retreat every day in the life. Particularly all the obstacles to understanding and practicing Guru devotion in all the stages of the Lam Rim, up to experiencing the generation stage, completion stage practices, and the union of indivisible bliss and emptiness. the state of total transformation of a body-mind into a Buddha. All the obstacles, hindrances, wrong views, spirit harms, sickness, everything that prevents us from experiencing the Dharma moment to moment in our daily lives with every breath we take. And having conviction and faith that it's purified, then we experience the yellow nectars and rays, bringing blessings of the Buddhas, of the Gurus, into the body, speech, and mind of ourselves and all sentient beings, bringing us the capacity to understand, to contemplate, and totally integrate the teachings of the Buddha into our mind streams. Even just we think the Four Noble Truths are very basic, but in actual fact, if we just imagine that understanding the truth of suffering, really getting the cause of suffering, so that inspires us to study the path, understand the path, and reach the true cessation. Inspiring us to not be lazy and just let our minds wander throughout the day into whatever thought that comes, but actually harnessing the mind with our own mind, and remembering renunciation, bodhicitta, right view throughout the day, transforming every path into the path to enlightenment, every activity into the path to enlightenment. Just a little mindfulness pouring into us and all sentient beings. Reminding us to pay attention to our minds and that we're experiencing it's just it's like the reflection in the mirror. It's an illusion, like a dream, everything in the day. Those of us who do tantric practice remember emptiness manifesting as the deity, experiencing divine pride. The ability to touch, be aware of the delusions, accept them, and letting go. Not really rejecting, not really accepting, just noticing and letting go into the divine pride and clear appearance. That allows us to have the wisdom to make the right decisions in the conventional reality that we inhabit, so that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. And we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, less suffering to ourselves, and more suffering to ourselves. So that we cause less suffering to others, by practicing the 6 perfections. Remembering to be generous, remembering to be moral, not harming others, and patience, and practicing perseverance, and being aware with mindfulness and concentration, and that everything is always actually in the nature of emptiness. So we imagine this pouring into us, and we rejoicing. Genuinely feeling happy, At least relieved. Just even the thought of maybe being able to do this brings us relief and joy and aspiration. And then the Guru Buddha comes very small, the size of like a mustard seed, comes to the crown of our heads and that of all sentient beings, enters in through the crown chakra, top of the head, purifying going down to the central channel, to the crown chakra, lighting that up, purifying, throat chakra, purifying, sitting in the center of the heart. Allowing ourselves to feel the safety, the kindness, the love of the Guru. That it allows us to let go of our self-pity concepts about ourselves, of our fears and hopes and prides, low self-esteem or over self-esteem, all these things. And we just sort of sit in a natural state of experiencing warm, tender, loving kindness for ourselves and all sentient beings. And then we kind of let go. And just the subjective mind that's looking, thinking, just focus on that by itself. Just awareness of awareness itself. And rest in that spacious experience. The subject itself becomes the object. And then let go. You don't have to try too long, you'll get tired. So then just come back again. Subjective experience of, me or I, whatever it is that's doing the looking. We think it's I, but it's not really an I. It's just an experience of subjective awareness. The mind thinks, so we think there is an agent of the thinker, but actually it's just thinking, conceptions. We can let go of that concept. And just relax the mind. No more concepts. And then relax again. Can't do that for too long. Pretty soon you're just thinking again. So this time when we're thinking about something, I'd like you to go back to what we were doing last weekend, which is I'd like you to return to developing a warm, loving kindness feeling for yourself. So you first, if you can't immediately do that, just think about something that does make you feel something, an actual feeling, emotional feeling of warmth and kindness and love, cherishing someone, something. Maybe it's the guru, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your child, maybe it is you, maybe it's your dog. And remember to be aware of the breath. And when you're breathing, you just breathe in and kind of it makes it bigger, stronger. And when you breathe out, you just relax and allow yourself to feel comforted, protected, safe, loved. Just imagine it, Might not be real, but just pretend. If you ever had the experience of being comforted by someone, just allow yourself to feel comforted. Not in a tight way, but in an open, kind of loving, something that's able to extend outwards, as well as inwards to yourself. So keep that going, and I wanted to go back to the experience. We were learning how to love our enemies. And what we were doing the kind of classical exercise of, thinking of somebody we loved, and then we once we got that feeling of somebody that we love, then we put in the, change that person in our objective sphere of awareness to someone we have difficulty with, someone that makes us feel angry, someone that makes us feel hurt. But this time, rather than trying to focus love on that person, what I'd like you to experiment with is just bring that person into your awareness, but then give the love to yourself with that person in your awareness. So, you bring that person up, and enough that the uncomfortable feeling comes. But rather than trying to love that person, try to love yourself in the presence of that person and that emotion that that person invokes in you. And just sit with that for a minute and see what happens. And if you need to, you can again do it with the breath. As you breathe in, one part of your mind is focusing on that person and what it does for you, but another part of your mind, as you're breathing in, you're allowing the love of the Guru and the love that's in the center of your chest permeate those negative feelings with the positive ones of care and love for yourself as you breathe in. And then again, within that inner environment of comfort and love, just look at awareness itself. That which is focusing, that which is thinking, just penetrate that. So that you kind of relax into what Lama Zopa calls a non-objectifying state of just experiencing that's tinged with love and compassion. And every time you breathe in, it gets more strong, and every time you exhale, you just let go into that state of not grasping at anything. Not even the experience of me. There's just awareness. mind again. Relax the effort. And just think, for the sake of all Mother Sentient beings, I must quickly, in this very lifetime, attain the state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. And for this reason, we're going to have a little discussion about practice. And then have a raffle to raise money for the center. Right? Fun. Okay, I make you work too hard, don't I? We just have to do this a little bit every time, because that's what I want you to get. And you don't, you only get these things if you practice it. So, because I know a lot of you are doing tantric practice, and when you do these tantric sadhanas, they're always supposed to be in that space, You have to generate that space, and then the tantric practice is just like a little boat going down in the river of that, So don't worry if you don't get it, because eventually you will, and doing the tantric sadhanas makes a lot of merit, so you can eventually get there, But you have to want it, and you have to practice. And this thing about, learning to love and appreciate yourself is so important, because otherwise you won't really practice, And I think a lot of times when we sit down to do these practices and these sadhanas, the mind's tight, And you sit down and you just like, I don't want to sit here, and you just like read your prayers as fast as you can because you want to get it over with, because you don't really like sitting there, right? Because you're uncomfortable, right? I know, I'm just like you guys. But if you can do this first, and just sort of like make yourself sit there, even though, it's like, and do the breathing. The breathing is so important, Even if you do just the simple, the Thich Nhat Hanh, that's so basic, breathing in, I feel love, breathing in, I relax, And eventually, even if you take, 5, 10, 15 minutes to do that, if you'll kind of, it's almost like you can penetrate through all that lung, Because we live in lives that we're just all shaken up every day, coming here, going there, be in the car, So if before you do your practice, like you can go for a walk or do a little qigong or just, put on your favorite song and dance, do something, it really helps. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, I'm sure you have, I don't know, the older one of us, we've probably heard of Osho or Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, He had a very controversial end to his life. But the beginning of his life, I can't judge what happened to him, but I had friends that were really involved in his trip, and they did this thing called chaotic meditation. Did you ever hear that? And what they would do was they would just dance really hard for 10 minutes or something, just, and then sit down and meditate. And, it's good. Because you got to do something with all that stuff. And if you drink a glass of wine, that kind of relaxes you, but it's still there, and the wine kind of makes you feel sort of sick anyway, so. And anyway, slowly, just don't give up. That's the main thing, just don't give up. And even if you can't find the peace before you start the practice, just try anyway, Give yourself that time when you're not reading and thinking and, but just being present with whatever is going on with you, And do that thing of, loving yourself and just trying to go through your body, and that thing I've taught you about going through your body and just try to, like with your mind's eye, you just kind of try to touch that uncomfortableness, And Lama Yeshe used to use the word penetrate. It's like with one part of your mind, with that loving kindness part of your mind, you can kind of penetrate that interference, yucky feeling, And the other thing is, and let go, and then you just kind of let go, So, because even, we wake up first thing in the morning, and in the past days, in the old days, particularly before the 90s and the 2000s, you could wake up in the morning and kind of be relaxed, But nowadays, we wake up, first thing we think of, I have to do this, 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 First thing when we wake up. So, I think just do this before you even get out of bed, just like, okay, I wake up, just kind of stop. And if you learned Reiki from Veronica, you can give yourself a little Reiki. I think that really helps, I really think that helps a lot. And just kind of take a moment to just like breathe into your heart chakra, and because there is something automatically, naturally blissful in your heart, And that's why we talk about hearts and love and, why we feel from the heart and all that stuff. There is, physiologically in our subtle body, that is where this resides, So that's why we bring the guru into the heart, because we're trying to like get into the more subtle home. It's like home, where the love is. So when you first wake up in the morning, just think about your heart and just breathe, you can just breathe into your heart, and whatever you remember of like Dharmakaya meditation, just kind of like try to emulate that. Think about somebody that you love and just give yourself a few minutes before you get up to just try to find that calm place. And just to, and every day, and then I know it's really hard to remember throughout the day, but if you can even take a minute to just, that I think originally we had the 6-session Guru Yoga because we would 6 times, you just stop for a minute and think. Yeah, I remember my friend David Molk, he told me when he first got the 6-session Guru Yoga, he thought it had to be 6 times a day. And so whatever he would be doing, if he was walking down the road, he'd sit down, This is, a long time ago because he didn't know better. He'd just stop, okay. But I think it's a good idea. I can see why. I think the Muslim thing of stopping and, it'd be nice if we had someone who put it on your app, like some little alarm that goes off, oh, remember to, like we can't have the, have you ever been to India and you can hear them calling the Muslims to prayer in the morning? It's so beautiful, So it's like if we could have something, on our telephones, some beautiful song, that you can set an alarm, just to remind you. And I know at Plum Village, where Thich Nhat Hanh lives, they like ring a bell every hour. I think it's every hour. Maybe it's every 15 minutes. I can't remember. Just to kind of like, oh, right, I remember. But you have to create that space first to know where you're going to go back to, And I think that in our education, in our Buddhist education, and particularly in our Gelugpa Buddhist education, we're just told to be think, read this, say this prayer, But we need to focus more on the meaning. They tell us in the teachings, it's not the words, it's the meaning, And it's not the meaning, it's the experience. So we need to really do more of that. Because you guys have all been studying for a long time. You know the words. You know the meaning. Now you need to get into the experience. And that's what retreat is about, is getting into the experience. And making it some taste, some juice. Lama used to say some chocolate. We need to taste the chocolate. So, and if everyone nowadays, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to take any time out. So, do retreat for 15 minutes. And, I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we should find it. I bet you could find it on the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. He gave a talk in the summer of 1982 at Tushita. I've been meaning myself to find it and print it out, because I know there's a transcript, because I think he used to have it once. And he called it Mind Retreat. And Rinpoche said, you can do retreat anywhere, because he said the real retreat is retreating from the 8 worldly concerns. Right? Everyone knows the 8 worldly concerns, you know? Not wanting blame, wanting to be famous, being, you know, sad when we don't get what we want, being really happy when we get what we want. You know, what are they? Loss and gain, blame and shame, what are they? Happiness, not happiness. And, yeah, these, I know what they are, I just can't think what they are right now, so I'm not going to stop. But you know what they are. Loss and gain, praise and blame, happiness, sadness. There's one more, I don't know. So, anyway, basically it's, you know, not being caught up in all the outside stuff that's going on. You know, I want this, I don't want that, being happy when you get something, not being happy. But, you know, unless you create this inner home, you can never abandon the 8 worldly dharmas, because you've got nowhere to go to abandon them. You know, you need a refuge, you need a place to go, so that all that stuff on the outside can't hurt you. You know, when people, because if you're completely caught up in what's going on, you know, when someone blames you and says you've done something wrong, you've got nowhere to escape from that. You're just right there with it. But if you have this inner refuge, there's a place that is like safe from someone screaming at you, you know. And even if you can't always get there, the more we practice, the easier it is to be there, until eventually we're kind of there all the time. And that's what you see with these great lamas, you know. Pleasure and pain, that's the other one I was leaving out. Pleasure and pain. You know, always seeking pleasure and being unhappy when we experience pain. You know? So, anyway, retreat. We've got 45 minutes. I'm just trying to think what's, you know, most beneficial for you, because I know it's not that easy for you all to do retreat. But you could, and even these days, I was going to say you could start a savings account so you could save up some money so you could go on a retreat. But even that's almost impossible these days. So, you know, maybe you could like decide, okay, on Saturdays I'm going to do a retreat at my house. You know? Think about the 8 worldly dharmas. But set yourself up and say, okay, today, I mean, I don't know if you have children, maybe that's impossible, but maybe you could take your children to the grandmother or something, I don't know. And just think, today I'm going to do 4 sessions of my meditation practice, whatever it is, and choose whatever you want to do that day. And just do it, you know. And try in your daily life to have a little bit of retreat time when you wake up, a little bit of retreat time before you go to sleep, you know. And, yeah. And I also believe very strongly that if you really do want to do a retreat, you know, I mean, even a weekend you can get something out of, you know. Or if you could, you know, like go to a group retreat somewhere where someone's organizing it and do a week retreat, you know. I mean, maybe one day you guys could organize something here. You know, someone must have a place where you could go and some of you could go and be, and, you know, whatever. Because I don't know if, you know, the talks, a couple of times I've been asked to give talks on retreat and how to do retreat, but, you know, thinking about it, I don't know if that's all that relevant to you guys, you know. But at least you can strive for it, you know, you can wish for it, you can try to create the cause for it, you know. And I think one thing that would create the cause for it is maybe it would be beneficial if I just told you what it's like to be on retreat, so you can know what it is to, why would you want to go on retreat, you know? And I guess the short answer to that is so that you can create this, you have the time to create a different habit of mind, you know, a different habit of always being in this busy 21st century monkey mind, you know. You get a chance to finally unwind a little bit and see what it's like to taste this more calm, blissful, maybe even get some experience of bodhicitta, some experience of emptiness, some experience of wishing to give up this life. Because really, the first ingredient to wanting to do a retreat is deciding, I'm really sick of this samsara. You know, I want something else. I want to get out, you know. I want to have a different mind. But in order to have that, you have to first be honest about the kind of mind that you have. And really contemplate, what is my life like today, you know? Is this really good enough for me, you know? Because it's so easy for us to be, I think in the West, you know, we have perfected the suffering of change. You know that we have the three sufferings, you know, the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering. Well, the all-pervasive suffering is this that's going on all the time, right? And this grasping. Lama Yeshe was so cute. When I first, a lot of us, not cute, I mean, he was, that's not nice, you know, he was more than cute, but his English was so sweet, and he used to say grasshopping mind. And we used to think he was saying grasshopping mind, you know, like because the grasshopper's like hopping around, you know, the grasshopping mind. But really he was saying the grasshopping mind, you know, grasshopping mind. So anyway, but then the suffering of change is like, you know, when it's cold, we just move into the sun and we get warm, and then we get warm too much, and so we go into the shade, and then, you know, and so that's what we're really good at, you know. I'm feeling a little bit, my mind's not very comfortable. Well, I'm just going to call my friend. Okay, I'm done calling my friend. Well, maybe now I'll go eat something. Maybe now I'll look at the YouTube. Oh, maybe now I'll go to the beach, and maybe now I'll do this, you know. And so we're constantly changing what we're doing. But in actual fact, as soon as we change, you know, the suffering of talking to my friend finishes, and then pretty soon the suffering of cooking dinner starts, and then pretty soon that becomes suffering, then we change something else. Because any of these things, if we do them long enough, even talking to your best friend on the telephone becomes suffering after a little while. You can't wait to get off the phone. Really, isn't it? You know? So you need to think about that. You know, that what would you do if you didn't have all this stuff to keep us constantly in this suffering of change, you know? And understand that that is the suffering of change. And try and experiment with just sitting with yourself as you are. And sitting there long enough to experience the suffering of suffering. And really, just the suffering of being. I mean, just having this mind is suffering. I mean, it can be transformed into something very, very blissful. But it doesn't happen by itself. I mean, we can do things that give us relief from that. You know, like, I mean, sex is really great for that, right? You get relief for about, what, a few minutes? Then it comes back. Oh, well, now I have to think about this. Da 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 da. You know. So, and the purpose of retreat is to sit with that long enough that you can actually penetrate that and just open up into this experience of just spaciousness. which then you can use to meditate on emptiness. And it's not like you can, someone was asking me, was it you? Someone was asking me about emptiness the other day. Oh, it was Yasmin. She's not here tonight, is she? She was asking about the experience of emptiness, and it was like, when you have it, when you have an experience, what's the difference between a realization of emptiness and the experience of emptiness? And I said, and this is just what I think, we can all have experiences of it. We can get blessings from the lamas, or even in our own meditation. Sometimes the eye disappears, we're in this blissful, and that's an experience of it. But realization is when it's there all the time. So just because you have some kind of experience of emptiness doesn't mean you realize emptiness. I mean, some people talk about instant enlightenment. They think just because one time they had it that they're enlightened, That's not it. But what we want is we want to put ourselves in the situation where those experiences can become more frequent and we can remember them. And because what we want to be able to do is remember them when the 8 worldly dharmas come up. When we're experiencing pleasure, mix that memory of emptiness with the pleasure. Mix that memory of emptiness with the pain, Mix that memory of emptiness with the loss. Mix the memory of emptiness with the gain, Even when you buy a new dress and you feel really cool, that's the dharma of gain, Just try to remember that experience of emptiness, and because it's not, renunciation doesn't mean that we have to give up our pleasure and be really mean to ourselves, or even give up the suffering of change. It's just that we have to always within that, never be giving up the wish. First of all, never forgetting that this is actually in the nature of suffering, and that we want to get something better than that, not only for ourselves, but we are the fortunate ones. We are the ones who are dwelling in the suffering of change all the time, thinking it's happiness. But there are so many sentient beings, even among our friends, that are suffering, And so we need to keep this inspiration, this wish alive, so that we can be of benefit to others, And even before we're enlightened, we can still be of some benefit, to others. I mean, I really believe that you just doing Tonglen for someone, going to the hospital doing Tonglen, can help. Of course, we can help, like you guys go and help and feed the people who need food and that kind of stuff, So I know it's really hard to keep in mind meditation on emptiness or meditation bodhicitta, but as much as you can, just try to remember. And that's why the breath, being aware of your breathing is so important, because if you can bring the awareness of the breathing into your meditation when you're sitting, then, if you can just remember your breathing when you're walking around in the suffering of change, it really helps you to remember. So when you're doing your tantric practice, always try to have that's why I've been trying to teach you, remember feeling your body, remember feeling your breathing, because that will, if you have that with your, experiences in your meditation, then when you're in the day and you just stop to remember, oh yeah, that's right, I have a head, I have hands, I have feet, and if you do that when you're sitting, then when you're doing in the walking around, it helps you to bring the awareness of your Dharma practice when we're out so busy, can't remember anything, because we're so multitasking in all the things that we have to do. So, yeah. So retreat. What does it take to do retreat? I think the main thing is inspiration. And so, and also I think karma. You have to have the karma. You have to create the karma. Like for me, I don't have anything to be, proud about. The fact that, I just had to have I had the karma of this life to do retreat, because, I met a guru that really inspired me, and I must have done something in a past life, because when I first heard about a 3-year retreat, I just went, I want to do that. I heard that immediately, I want to do that. And I just dropped everything and just focused on making that happen. It took 8 years, of total concentrated effort to make that happen. So, and I'm not trying to advertise, land of calm abiding or where I come from or what I do, but if one way to create the cause is to support other people doing retreat, because that will give you the karma. It creates, because, karma like creates like. So if you're actually supporting someone who's doing it, then it, and I didn't mean to say this, but I'm just now trying to think, what can you do? If you're not in retreat and you want to do a long retreat, then, support retreat centers and support people doing retreat. And then the main thing is to, dedicate, motivate and dedicate. If you really want to do retreat, at the end of your meditation practices, dedicate. May one day may my work this life bring me to retreat. I have a friend who, had a normal life. She had 3 kids, regular life. But when she retired, she took her Social Security and she went into retreat. And, starting retreat when you're 65 is a little late, but it's not too late. Particularly if you've been, she was a very good student anyway, and she always meditated on Lam Rim, and she worked in Dharma centers, and she supported meditators, and she did all that stuff, even though she, had a 9-to-5 job and 3 children and a husband. But, miraculously, the husband left her for somebody else, so she didn't have a husband. And yeah, actually, he went and he did a good thing too. But they had to separate, and then she's just finished a 3-year retreat. So, and she did it very relaxed in her house. I have another friend who did a 3-year retreat in downtown San Francisco, and she did all her own shopping, but she did the retreat in San Francisco, and she got really good experience. So you don't necessarily, have to, get a retreat place or spend a lot of money to go to a retreat place. But the one thing that my wish, for Land of Calm Abiding, is that it will be free. Because we need a place where people don't need money to do retreat. In the old days, like in India, you could just put on the robes and get a begging bowl, and that's all you needed. So we need to simulate something like that for people who really are serious, that they can just, and they can go to that place, and that there's a group of people all around the world who are giving $20 a month, so that when that person, whoever it is, Corey or you or, decides, I want to do a retreat, they can just show up and be taken care of by everybody else. And that's my dream, that everybody, 100,000 people are supporting the 10 that are at the point in their lives where they finally have enough merit to do retreat, And then that also helps the whole world, because everybody else is creating the cause to do retreat. And the important part about it is that if people don't get the experience, then the Dharma is just only going to be alive in words, which means it'll be dead. And even among Tibetans, it's very difficult to have the conditions to do retreat, I read something just really recently, since I've been here, some book I was reading, I don't know which one. I think it was maybe one of Jeffrey Hopkins' forwards to what the Dalai Lama book on compassion I was looking at. He said that, when the Dalai Lama came out of Tibet, he wondered how many Tibetans actually had gained Shine. And apparently it was about 5. So we're not unusual. And so it's really important that we, as a society, if we value the Dharma, then we need to have a few astronauts who can go to the moon. You know, the people who have been working at it, you know, it's like takes lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, but maybe this is their last lifetime before getting it. You know, and so if we can help those people, then that will help us to maybe next lifetime be that person. You know? So I think that as a society, and even within our Buddhist culture, we need to focus on this aspect of our, whatever it is, you know, our work in the world, you know, to try to preserve the Dharma. Because, you know, we're at the point now where I think it's some other Lama I heard recently saying, you know, who was it? I can't remember them right now, but in the West, now we have gompas, we have centers, we have teachers. Everything's translated into, at least into English. It's going, you know, but where are the people who are going to hold the Dharma? We don't have that in the West. And part of it is the obstacle of our Western culture. Because, like, I know people, sadly enough, you know, who said, well, I couldn't do a retreat, or I couldn't be a monk, because I couldn't ask people to support me. You know, we have this big thing, you know, that it's a sin, you know, it's a shame if we don't have everything we need for ourselves. And so you see people who think that, oh, when they save $100,000, then they can do a retreat, you know. They might die before they get that, you know. And so another big obstacle is that, and then you hear people going, wow, that person's not supporting themselves? What's wrong with them? You know, there's something wrong with them. Oh, they're getting, well, it's like welfare, you know. They're just lazy, you know. So it's this kind of mindset, because we don't, in Asia it's a little bit different. People understand that it's really important to have a few people gaining the realizations, you know, that after they do the studies, that they need to do retreat. Like even my young friend Jake, who's just started retreat at Lanakam Abiding, he was confessing to me that, you know, his center, his home center in London, has supported him for his whole 6 years of training. And part of the training, the master's program, the FPMT master's program, was to do a 1-year retreat, right? You don't get very much after 1 year. But he feels like, well, now because they've been supporting him, they want him to come back and teach. And I'm like, I feel like I need to write them all a letter and say, wait a minute, you know, if Jake is ready to keep going after 1 more year, you guys should keep supporting him and not saying, well, you know, now you have to come back and teach. Because you already have a lot of people who like to teach, but don't have the karma to be in retreat, don't have the karma to sit there and go through the, you know, because it takes a lot of perseverance and inspiration to sit with your self-cherishing, grasping crap, you know, and that's what happens in retreat, you know, you have to sit with it, which is why I've been teaching so much of the loving the self thing, because in the West, you know, we have so much low feelings about ourselves that we don't have the power and the strength to cut through that stuff, you know. Luckily for me, you know, I was interested in psychology before I met the Dharma, so, you know, I mean, I was able to kind of, you know, use the psychological things that I had, tools that I had to help me, you know. And that's one thing you really need to do on a retreat, is you have to be able to, as Lama Yeshe said, be your own psychologist. And also, the other thing is, if you are having problems, don't be afraid to ask for help, you know. And I think the biggest thing on retreat, and another thing I'll share with you is Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when Samden and I were getting ready to do the second long retreat, and very kindly, a woman named Pam Caton was raising money for us at a group retreat with Lama Zopa, and so he was walking out the door one day, and Pam got up and said, we'd like to raise some money for Roger and Paula, blah, 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 And Rinpoche came back, and he sat down, and he said, I just want to tell you something about these two. And I'm talking about it not as if it's me, it's like somebody else. I don't know anybody else it's happened to, so I'm not trying to oh, I'm great, But he said, I've been watching these people, And the reason I've accepted their retreat, he said, is not because they said all the mantras, because they could endure the hardship. He said, anybody can say mantras. Anybody can sit there and not pay attention to anything that's going on and just go Om Tarti Tari Turi Soha for, hours and hours a day and pretend, But the fact that when the stuff comes up, that you have the inspiration and the perseverance to go through with it, that's why he said it wasn't so much that we gained any great realizations, but we were able to sit with the hardship. Because, you see, it's the hardship is where the realizations come. Because, I went into my first long retreat, with all these great, generation stage, completion stage, because they tell you, the Tibetans tell you, you can get enlightened in 3 years, you just need to do 3 retreats. So you go, great. I'm going to do 3 retreats. I'm going to come out enlightened and be a great Lama and enlighten everybody, Well, it's not really like that. At least it wasn't for me. But what I can say is that doing the generation stage practices, it seemed like it gave me the merit to gain the Lam Rim realization. The enduring the hardship, transforming the hardship. Because really the main mantra for that retreat for me was that line in the Lama Chopa, when the environment and the beings therein become filled with the fruits of my karmic debts and unwished for sufferings pour down like rain, please bless me to transform these negative circumstances into the path of enlightenment. That's all I could do, because that's all that kept happening. Just hardship after hardship after hardship. And, the thing about one of these great retreats is that this is why the Nundro is important. When you do the Nundros, it gives you this stability in your aspiration and faith through the different merit that you create by doing the Nundros, because they're all about purifying and accumulating, right? Purifying obstacles and accumulating merit. So that when the obstacles come, like not once did Samden or I ever think about leaving that retreat, even though it was really difficult, And we both felt like it was because we did the Nundros, and we did the Nundros well. We didn't, Lama Zopa was a little more kind with us. He was very kind. He just said, he gave us these 9 Nundros, and he said, as karma permits. So in other words, as best as you can do them, get them done. But because, I'd already done retreats before that, I'd done a couple of Vajrasattva retreats and things, and so I already knew how to, or was beginning to know how to sit with that, like I was telling you, to like penetrate through all the lung that's going on, so you can find that peaceful ocean underneath all the stuff, so you can kind of meditate in the peaceful ocean rather than on the choppy waves on the surface. And you have to go down in the deep part, And because of that, the Nundros were done in a really sincere, deep way. It wasn't just Saji Puki Jikti Meta count. Because I knew people at the time when it was like, because it was like a lot of people back in the 80s wanted to do 3-year retreats, and they'd go, did you get your refuge Nundro done? Oh, I did it in 3 weeks. Did you get your Vajrasattva done? Oh, I did it in 3 months. Namo Guru, Namo Guru, Namo Guru, Namo Daya, Namo Daya, mind's good, blah, 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 blah. They never penetrated into the deep, you know. So they were really taking refuge, right? Because when you're doing the refuge nindra, you're really taking refuge. And the mantra is just kind of like, you know, the soundtrack to the experience, you know. It's not that there's the mantra going on and the experience is, you know, you're everywhere, 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 you know. Now, for me, when I did Vajrasattva, my mind was everywhere, 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 but because Vajrasattva brings everything up. But still, because, you know, like I was saying earlier, the whole Kirti Centro Rinpoche said, I'm going to say it again because I know I said it last week, he said, it wasn't even a big deal, you know. It was something maybe a lot of people didn't even get because it was just like a little thing here, you know. I can't remember who was translating at the time. Maybe it was Zenla. I think it was Zenla. And he said, you know, the whole key to tantric practice is faith and intention. So even if your mind is a bit crazy, if you really have a strong intention, you know, I really want to attain enlightenment. I really want to, you know, purify, you know. And this faith that comes from, you know, I was talking about the three faiths, you know, really knowing what the situation is, you know, knowing the path, you know, believing in that path because you test it, you know, like Buddha said, you test it. And then because of that, aspiring, you know, I must attain enlightenment, you know, continually aspiring. And then you can, with those faith and the intention, even if you don't think you're very good, you know, I'm still not a good practitioner. I still don't think I'm, you know, but slowly, you do make practice, you know. So this mind that we have, oh, I'm not good enough, that's the one you really have to like, you know, you are good enough. You know, you have to wake up in the morning, I'm good enough to get enlightened. You know, even if you don't think that's your obstacle, believe me, it is your obstacle. You know, I remember, I wasn't there, but Lama gave a commentary on Vajrayogini. My friend Bill Kane told me this. And he said, he looked around and he said, how many of you really believe you can get enlightened? Nobody did. You know, so you have to have faith and intention in the object, you know, in the path and in the Buddhas, and like, but you also have to have some kind of faith in yourself. And you have to build that through these exercises that we've been doing, and how to love yourself and accept, you know, how broken we are. Everybody's broken. There's nobody that had a perfect mother. Everybody is insecure, you know. Everybody's neurotic, you know. It's no big deal. You know? Just get on with it. You know, and, you know, get some help, right? Because we can't let that be our obstacle, right, to doing retreat. And another way to stay inspired too, and it's so great, I'm really grateful, you know, to all the people who study Tibetan and our translators, because and I hope more and more of them become available in Spanish, you know, because there's so many great inspiring books out now about the past meditators, you know, reading the stories of the life of Shabkar and Yesi Sogil and Women of Wisdom and Parampasangye and Machik Labdran and, you know, and the Enlightened Beings, you know, the one Jan Willis's book, and you know, it's not impossible. And then, you know, you hear stories that even just in the last, I don't know about since they've come out of Tibet, but you hear lamas that say, you know, they knew somebody who attained the rainbow body, you know. I mean, it was still happening in Tibet. It was still happening, you know. In the 20th century, people were attaining enlightenment in the 20th century in Tibet, you know. And it seems, I mean, I think one of the problems that I've had, and I think it's just a cultural thing, because I grew up in the 60s in Berkeley, and my parents were activists, and everybody was an activist, and I didn't even know that was a word, because I didn't know that activist was like something you could be, because everybody was, and so like we were raised, that the purpose of life is to go out and change the world and make it a better place by becoming a public health person and going to Africa and teaching people about birth control, or going into the Peace Corps, or whatever, being a school teacher, or being a doctor, being out there serving society. And that's another really big problem. Who are you helping by being in retreat? That was my mom's big question, and I remember she came to teaching sometimes, and she said, she asked, because she was really concerned, that I was like dropped out, and she said, who's she helping in retreat? He said, the insects. But, from a Tibetan cultural thing, that's really something. Insects are sentient beings, and the fact that I might be blowing mantras on insects, I don't know if that really convinced my mother, but... But what I try to tell people, when they ask me, I say, well, when someone goes off to medical school, who are they benefiting for 8 years, right? They're just going to school, and they get scholarships, and they get set up, and then when they come out, they're doctors. Well, doing retreat is like that. It's like you have to think of yourself like you're going to medical school. Because even so, they tell us the Buddha's like a doctor, right? And because that I think that helps. Because, I mean, I have to admit, even still in my mind, sometimes I think, well, maybe I'd be better off if I was, going to Africa and, helping people with AIDS, or taking care of babies, or, what am I? Because it just feels like it's so hard to see progress in the Dharma, And the thing is, it's kind of like based on total faith that in a future life you're going to be a Buddha. So it's really hard to, give up your life to do something that you just believe is going to have a result in a future life, So, however, this is why it's really important that we have lamas that are realized, and why it's important that we continue to support people to gain realizations. Because if there aren't people who have realizations that can show us that it took lifetimes to get there, then we aren't going to be inspired to give up this life, to work the whole lifetime, to have something that's going to have a fruit in a future life that's going to benefit sentient beings, And another story I could share is when I finished my second long retreat, and this was one that Kabje Rinpoche asked to do, and it was during that time, it was like 2000 to 2005, and that's when the world really changed. That's when I felt like we just went backwards, really way backwards, society, just because of suddenly, I heard about the bombing of, the Twin Towers, but then the worst part was right away going into Afghanistan, Iraq, and everybody thinking that Saddam Hussein had something to do with it, It was like so totally crazy. And I was just really concerned, and also because I came out of retreat, and everybody it was so tangible, the change. Everyone's like nervous more, everyone's meaner, the girls aren't wearing any clothes anymore, and I went out into the into the streets. Everyone's talking to themselves all the time. I didn't even know what that was at first. Standing in line, talk. The world really changed. When I went into retreat, people didn't have cell phones all the time. And there wasn't this thing, and the whole economic downturn, and now everybody has to work all the time. You know, they're constantly, it's not like you go to work at 10 and come home at 6 and you're done, you know. And so I just felt like, wow, I really need to do something to help, you know. And I even thought about things like, maybe I should just go to Washington and sit on the steps and read the Sutra of Golden Light out 24 hours a day or something, you know. I mean, something like that, you know. But I don't know why I said this is coming to tell you, but I'll tell you. So I told Rinpoche, I said, you know, and that the whole climate change, and, you know, there's just like so much bad stuff that I was like, you know, and here I am sitting here going, da 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 da, you know, what benefit is that? You know, I had a really hard time finding what, you know, because I didn't have enough faith, you know. Samden, he never has that problem, but I think it's my culture, you know, because I was brought up that you're supposed to be doing something. So I went to Rinpoche and I said, Rinpoche, you know, wouldn't it be good to go out and like try to do something about global warming or these problems? And he looked at me and he said, dear, this is also Zenlo was translating again. He said, don't worry about this planet. He said, there are many universes. There are many planets. He said, you focus on getting enlightened. That's the most important thing. Because what's going on now, in the big scheme of things, is very, very short. And this is the thing that we don't understand, you know. Buddhas, you know, we really have a hard time understanding beginningless lifetimes, beginningless universes. You know, because we get so focused on this life, even this day, this problem, you know. We make such a big deal out of this problem we're having right now, you know. Whereas from a Buddha, you know, from Rinpa Rinpoche's standpoint, it's just, you know, this lifetime, this, you know. So we need to train ourselves to understand that our concept of time is very, you know, it's just as much as diluted as anything else about us. And so the fact that we make a big deal out of all this stuff, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have compassion and we shouldn't be helping and we shouldn't be trying to do something about these things, but at the same time, according to the worldview that we are trying to incorporate as being Buddhists, you know, it's really what it is. It's a whole new worldview, isn't it? It's a whole new concept of reality. And within this concept of reality, you know, it's really much bigger. And enlightenment is really important because their suffering is all pervasive. And the amount of Buddhas there are is not that many Buddhas. So, you know, if you have the potential for enlightenment, it's the most precious thing. You know, and even though we have done all the teachings on the perfect human rebirth, none of us have realized the perfect human rebirth. Because if we realized our perfect human rebirth, we would not be wasting all our time. You know, we'd be like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, constantly working towards enlightenment. You know, and according to some views, a very strict definition of a perfect human rebirth, none of us have a perfect human rebirth. Because one way to interpret the 10 endowments, the last one, is actually being supported by others to do retreat. So unless you are supported by others to do retreat, unless you're able, maybe not retreat, but maybe it's also practicing Dharma in another way, then you don't have a perfect human rebirth. So if you want a perfect human rebirth and you don't have one, support someone that does. Or help someone get one, you know. Pick one of you guys. Pick one of you. And put them in retreat. All of you support one person in retreat. Somebody that you know. It'll mean a lot to you. You know. Because you'll be directly creating the cause to get the perfect human rebirth because you're offering someone else one. So, you know, you could think about that. This is a group. If there's somebody in this group who feels ready to do something like that, and you check with Yangtze Rinpoche. I mean, I can't tell you what to do. It's just, I mean, this is just coming to me spontaneously off the top of my head. But, if you had someone that you could actually help in retreat, imagine the karma of offering someone a perfect human rebirth. What an offering. So maybe think about that. Yeah. So it's time to do the raffle. So of course I was going to tell you all about retreat and how to do retreat, but it just sort of didn't seem appropriate for this group because if you were a group getting ready to go off to retreat, then you'd want to know what you need to eat and how you sleep and what you do this, but you're not there, so why tell you all that stuff, So anyway, so let's dedicate the merits of whatever happened here together tonight. If it was beneficial, I hope there was some benefit here, and we'll dedicate it to that we all have perfect human rebirths, and then we're all able to create the causes to attain the realizations so that we can become a Buddha as quickly as possible. And also, let's dedicate that we all learn to have faith in ourselves and believe in ourselves and learn to create that inner refuge home. It becomes a habit. You have to do it. You have to make it a habit. Everything has to become a habit. So that you have a place when you wake up in the morning, you take a big breath and you feel at one with the Guru, and you feel happy and you feel blissful when you wake up in the morning. Take a big breath. I'm the deity, Doesn't this feel good? I'm going to go out and benefit sentient beings. Every morning, feel that, Create the cause for that. If you can just do that, it'll transform your life totally. So we can do all the long dedications after the raffle, because the raffle's part of the thing. Okay? So I don't know who is supposed to be doing that, but Corey? Yeah, a question? Yeah, we have a couple. I have time. It won't take long to do the raffle, I don't think.
More like a commentary on whether to do something or not do something about global warming and all those issues.
Yeah.
And it has to do with our lack of omniscience.
Yes.
And what colloquially is called the law of unintended consequences.
Exactly.
So we think we're helping, but we could be
exactly
doing something sideways or even backwards.
Exactly. That's why, you end up, that's a very good point. What he's saying is that, a lot of the problem with not having omniscience is that you can do something that think is going to benefit because you can't see the result. So then it brings harm. I know we've all done that in our lives. You think you're trying to help somebody and it causes another problem over here. And that's the whole story of the 20th century. I'm sure even the people who made the atom bomb thought they were doing something good. So much of science has huge, horrible consequences, So that's a very good point. That's why we have to become a Buddha, so that we can see the result of our actions, Do you want to use this, Rita? This thing? I think so. I'm finished, right? Okay. Everybody pray. Anybody want to debate me? I don't think there are any questions. Okay, so you want to dedicate now?
Vamos a hacer la dedicación para después pasar a las personas que quieran en tal ofrecimiento, ¿ok? Que por los méritos de esta virtud pueda alcanzar rápidamente el estado de un gurú Buda y pueda llevar a este estado a todo ser sin excepción. La mente de iluminación es suprema y muy preciada, que donde no ha surgido surja, que donde ha surgido no disminuya, que cobre cada vez más fuerza. La visión correcta del vacío es suprema y muy preciada, que donde no ha surgido surja, que donde ha surgido no disminuya, que cobre cada vez más fuerza. Así como el valiente Manyushi y Samantabhadra distinguieron los fenómenos tal cual son, yo también dedico estos méritos en la mejor forma, siguiendo su ejemplo perfecto. Dedico todas estas raíces de virtud con la dedicación que es considerada la mejor por los victoriosos asidos de los 3 tiempos para poder realizar todas las buenas obras. Y ahora hacemos la oración de larga vida de nuestro maestro Yansi Rinpoche y de todos los maestros que enseñan el Dharma a través del mundo. Madre Tare, liberando del samsara. Tu Tare, liberando de los 8 temores. Tara, Madre que libera, por favor otorga el don de la longevidad. Por las bendiciones de los gurús raíz y del linaje. Por los logros espirituales de los dioses y diosas. Por los métodos hábiles de las dakinis y los protectores del Dharma, que podamos realizar gozosamente la esencia de nuestras esperanzas. Kendun Denzin, eres afable, benevolente y bondadoso. Por favor, permanece con nosotros durante una larga vida. Expande tus actividades iluminadas en todas las direcciones y continúa madurando y sustentándonos a mí y a todos los seres sintientes. Desde este momento y durante todas nuestras vidas, manténnos bajo tu tutela, nuestro amigo, nuestro divino y virtuoso guía. Limpia la degeneración de la ignorancia. Ayúdanos a realizar rápidamente nuestro recorrido por los senderos y caminos y alcanzar los 3 cuerpos de un Buda. Por la verdad de la realidad incambiable y por la bendición conjunta de la indestructible Sangha, que la esencia de estas oraciones se logre rápidamente. There's something they want to give you. This is your present.
Is that a case?
Yeah, the case. Se le está dando un obsequio en nombre del centro, de todos nosotros. Nosotros teníamos una guitarra hace tiempo que se la habían donado a ella y en esta ocasión pues le conseguimos el case,